there's any film that gives a post-apocalyptic or dystopian look to it, is Lomography Redscale. The blood orange skies, the deep blacks, an industrial look makes it feel like scenes out of some of my favorite remakes of classics, like Blade Runner 2049, Mad Max Fury Road, and Dune. But in today's video, I'm going to show you how this cyberpunk Armageddon of a film looks like at night. One of the first things I like to do when shooting at night is go to this spot, a pretty mundane and neutral scene, to see how it renders the lighting. So here are some of my favorite shots taken at night. In the last video, we talked about how Metropolis only really showed reds, yellows, and oranges, and muted or desaturated all other colors, almost like a bleach bypass. Whereas Redscale seems to turn that red, orange, and yellow spectrum up to 1000%. I especially like when there are scenes that have a good mixture of red light, orange midtones, and yellow lights. I also love how the highlights of the altered state sign looked. But even scenes that are more monochromatic can have a great look to them as well. Now I'm going to compare Redscale versus Cinestill 800T to give you a reference of how many of these scenes looked normally. I think Cinestill 800T is a good base since it is one of the most common films to shoot at night. I liked how this scene basically turned blood orange. Here you can see the 800T is a bit underexposed, but I think it gives a good overall look at how the Redscale handles highlights, shadows, and midtones. This image shows how the sky turns an amber red, while the green grass turns kind of a yellow color. I love going to this parking garage at night because of these beams of light. What's interesting to me is that the lights are nearly the same, but how the ceilings inside the garage look as yellowish orange on Redscale, but kind of a creamy blue on the Cinestill 800T. Here's an example where the Redscale might be too much, with red overpowering the scene, but I think it's good to see how it handles, especially where you see the brick on the building up above the neon sign. I also found at times the Redscale didn't have much, if any, red in the scene, and it could be all yellow or orange. In this photo you can see on the Cinestill 800T there are two different color temperature lights, but the Redscale pretty much treats them the same. One of the colors that kind of comes through on Redscale is green, but as you can see on the building it turns the turquoise to yellow and the kinda teal looking green light into a neon green on Redscale. I think this is my favorite night shot on Redscale. I love the sign, how the sky looks, the street lights, and the condo lights in the upper right. It just gives that 28 days later look. Here's another example of how green renders at night on Redscale. Now I'm going to give a few examples of side-by-side shots of day and night for Redscale. I think it's interesting how these two rendered. The day shot was during a bright day with lots of clouds, whereas the night shot was during blue hour. I know these two images aren't really lined up, but I think it gives a good example of how much the sky changes and how night lights look during the evening on Redscale. For the daylight image, it makes it look like there's smoke and fire-filled skies, while the night image gives an industrial cyberpunk look. I think this image shows how important the lighting for the scene is that day. My favorite shots that turned out on Redscale during the day were sunny days with dramatic clouds, whereas it looked best at night when the sun was well past being set and you were exposing for street and building lights. If you want to try shooting Redscale at night, here are a couple of simple tips. All of the LomoChrome films have an ISO range on them, and for Redscale it is 50 to 200. I highly recommend shooting at 50 or lower down to 25 ISO. These films need more light to be able to capture the look, and for that reason I think it's best to shoot with a tripod. The one time I shot it handheld, I found many of the shots were very underexposed. So thank you for watching today's video. This is the second episode in a 4-part series, looking at these 4 lomography films while shooting at night. LomoChrome Metropolis, Lomography Redscale, LomoChrome Purple, and LomoChrome Turquoise. So come back next week for the next episode. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.